Hi, LinkedIn land. This is Selena, and I'm here with Luisa, and we are here to talk about cash flow confidence. I know, I love it. We're like, woohoo, let's talk cash flow. So I'm Selena Guerrero. I'm a sales and LinkedIn coach, and I help consultants and service providers find their best leads using LinkedIn and, turn those people and businesses into their best clients. I'm very focused on helping people build out their sales systems and really leveraging LinkedIn as a primary tool for doing that. I say that I'm a sales and LinkedIn coach. I'm a sales coach first, and then I like to teach people how to use LinkedIn to enable that. And I'm really excited to talk with Luisa today, who I've known for a couple of years now, right? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to just segue that by saying you were my LinkedIn coach. You are the reason why I exist on LinkedIn. I've been able to grow my business on LinkedIn. I've met a lot of incredible people, gotten so much visibility, found my voice. So I just have to thank you. So that was how we initially came together. And that was, about 2 years ago almost, which is wild.
Yes. Well,
Uh,
you do so well on LinkedIn. I think you're really using it very, very well and like just, using it for all it is. And I love this idea that you brought up finding your voice because I think that's a really big part of how to find who you are and who you serve and how to talk about what you do. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was very unexpected, but it's been really powerful. So thank you for your leadership and mentorship there. I'm so excited for this. My name is Luisa Alberto, and I'm the founder and CEO of People First Finance. And we provide financial services to agency owners, service providers. We handle accounting, tax, and advising services for those of you who are scaling your business and want really wonderful expertise from a women-led team. That's what we do. And I just launched a bookkeeping offer. So anyway, we'll talk about those things later. But yeah, the world of finance is where I live every day.
Awesome. And I don't think I live in the world of finance, but I do live in the world of money because, of course, as a sales coach, we need money to be able to manage. And I think that's really what we're going to dig into today. Just really quickly before we do, if you're here, please put your name in the chat, say hi, and we really would love to answer any questions that come up. So please don't hesitate to put that in the comments. I'm going to keep an eye on it. And so we were thinking about this idea of cash flow. And sometimes I wonder, like, do you think people know what cash flow is
Funny because
when
I
you
don't
say
think
that
people
term?
use that term. I did some focus groups recently and I asked a question and used the term cash flow, and everybody was like, what's that? So yeah.
And totally, I think that's so true. And I actually, honestly, it's so weird because I actually like had to Google it because I know what it is conceptually, but I was like, am I right? Like, do I actually know what that means? So just for our listeners, cash flow. Okay, I'm going to say it and then your finance person are going to correct me, but it's like cash flow is like it flows in and it flows out, and how you manage that is important. Is that right? What is how would you describe cash flow?
Totally. It's that simple, right? It's the cash that comes in. So what's cool about what we're going to talk about is you're really on this like how to get the cash inside. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now you've got the cash. How do you make sure that it's flowing in the right directions in your business, to you, to the tax man, all the things. So yes, that is cash flow.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to keep this super simple. I'm going to start with like just 3 or 4 things that for the listeners here of like, how do you make sure your cash is how to get cash into your business? And I think most importantly, what everybody wants in their business, right, is to have steady, sustainable revenue, right? Like people want that, when people go into business, it's like, I want to have time freedom and I want to, make a big impact, but really none of that is possible if you don't get sales. And secondarily, I don't think it's really possible if you're not managing that money in the right way. So here are some really simple, it's not simple, but quick ideas around how to make more consistent, steady revenue. Why? Because most of us, when we go into business, we have what we call roller coaster revenue, which means you have a lot of money one month and then you have no money the next month coming in, right? Or feast or famine, same term, right? We talk about all the time. Like you get a big client And then that contract runs out and now you have no money coming in, right? And so the dream business is really when you have consistent revenue coming in and you're not pulling out your hair every month worrying about how to pay their bills. So really, I don't want to say it's a simple way, but a simple way of thinking about your business in terms of getting consistent revenue. Number one is simply having retainer-based clients. So for example, you could have a client and you could have, I'll give you an example. I have a client, she's a web designer and she has one, big flux of income when she signs a client for the website, but then she has a maintenance offer where it's a retainer base, she's getting regular revenue. Another example, I have a membership. It is an annual membership. And so people can pay upfront, but they also can pay on a monthly basis. What does that allow me to do? It allows me to know that I'm going to have a certain amount of guaranteed income every single month so I can actually plan ahead, right? Another example would be simply, for a lot of us, just raising your prices, certainly, right? That's always, women, we all tend to underprice ourselves. So just raising the prices actually might get you more, at least maybe it's still roller coaster, but at least you have more money to deal with, right? To be able to leverage and grow your business and create a steadier flow of revenue. And this is, of course, the big one, which is building a pipeline. And this is where I live, which is
where you shine.
where I feel like I'm the happiest, which is when people get referrals, right? We all go into business, we get referrals, we talk to our friends and our clients and our past clients and business people. And when people send referrals to us, I'm like, oh, really? You should really work with Luisa, which is, awesome. But we cannot control when we're going to get referrals. Okay. And I have a whole backstory on why referrals are not always they convert at a very high rate, but they're not always your good client, et cetera, et cetera. We can get that for another day. But when you have referrals, my business is solely me waiting for the email that says so-and-so refers you, I'd love to talk to you. I have absolutely no way really to be able to project what revenue I have 3 months from now. How am I going to hire that assistant or that service provider that I want as part of my team if I actually don't know if I have money coming in? So what I would absolutely say for cash flow confidence, to feel like you're building a business that is sustainable, that allows you to go on vacation and allows you to create consistent impact and not lose sleep every night, because we all know what that's like, is to build a pipeline. And that literally is doing what you did, Luisa, right? Getting on LinkedIn, making yourself visible, connecting with people, giving them a newsletter to sign up for, telling them how to work with you, and eventually getting them onto that call, but really going to market. And I will just say, it is completely possible to have a business where you have 5 retainer clients, and that's fine. But the fact is if you're not on a full-time, 5 client retainer and that fills your cup and you're at capacity and everything's great, you're going to need to keep filling that funnel. So building a pipeline. So let me repeat that. Number 1, think about some kind of recurring retainer subscription membership option in your business, so that even if you are getting bigger clients, here or there, you still have that some foundational money coming in. The second is you could literally just raise your prices. And then third would be to actually build a proper marketing and sales system into your business. And if you need help with that, you should reach out to me because I can help you with that. But that's going to be able to get you that money in to be able to project some sense of what is actually going to come into your business. Thoughts, Luisa?
Snaps, first of all, snaps. Solid gold, as usual, of course. And it's interesting because I think something that I pulled out, I was taking some notes because I didn't want to forget, but a couple of things that I pulled out from what you said that kind of falls from your camp into my camp is this idea, this concept of consistency, right? We really want consistent cash flow. We want consistent leads, right? But what we have to start realizing as business owners is that we create the consistency. It is up to us to be consistent. So going from, when we're thinking about building a sales pipeline, we're thinking about getting visible on LinkedIn, and we're thinking about, world, we've really got to be consistent in the actions that we're taking to build our sales pipeline, to do lead gen, to show up, to be visible where our potential clients are, so that we have a chance at getting those consistent results. And I think, for so long in my earlier entrepreneurial journey, I was looking for solutions outside of myself for that consistency. I think because when you're dependent on a paycheck, or, you hire coaches or that sort of thing, you're sort of in this like searching mode for that consistency. And then one day you realize like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like I actually am the one who needs to be consistent in the actions that I'm taking for the results that I want and need, right? So we're talking about money. Really it's about being consistent. I think it's really hard for folks to wrap their heads around what that means when it comes to managing cash, right? Like I have a newsletter going out, and I had this concept of like, people don't like to budget because they're like, well, I don't know how much money I'm going to have next month. Well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, I certainly don't know. So what do we do about that? You know what I mean? So there's this sense of responsibility and ownership that we have to have as self-employed individuals to go out and get visible and build the systems we need that help support us in that consistency. So that really came up for me as a thread in a lot of what you were talking about, Selena.
And I think what happens, I really see this time and time again, is when we come into business, we get the referrals and we're like, wow, this is the best thing ever. I should have gone into business 10 years ago. And people love new things. People want to support you, especially when you go into business for yourself. A lot of people are living vicariously and through you. They're excited and they want to support you. But at some point, if you don't have a plan to actually bring those people in, that I think part of the reason that consistency actually becomes a mindset and a thing that you actually have to focus on is because I think for a time you can be successful without that consistency, right?
That's exactly it. And so we get this false sense of security, or this, like, it's an adrenaline rush, right? All of a sudden you've sent an email, you've reached out to a few people, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's raining. Like, this is amazing. And then you turn your head to the side, you get bogged down in the work, and you forget to keep sending those emails. You don't have the capacity. You want to outsource it. You're like, I don't have time for that. I just want the people to come in so I can do the thing. Right. But it really is up to us to have that consistency and to figure out the way. And there's no magic secret pill to this, like no magic solution that you can pay for that will help you wake up every day and choose to be consistent and choose to spend your time on the right things that will give you those leads, that will bring in that cash, right?
Yes. Okay. So this is a perfect time to segue to the cash flow management. And I'll say why, because I think what happens is the biggest problem with the feast or famine and the roller coaster revenue is that you get a big client. You're so busy serving that client that you don't have time to do the marketing. And I absolutely think it is a level of commitment that you just have to make if you want to be in business. Like, you have to market forever, like, basically, right? And I think there is kind of two components to that. I think one is just making that commitment and understanding that no one is going to do it for you, like, right? And so one of the challenges, though, is that when people get these big clients, right, then they don't have time to market. So let's say for a second now, moving on to cash flow management, what if in order to be more consistent and bring those leads in and that cash in more consistently, I'm able to hire someone to support me in that? That kind of speaks to the cash flow management. Like, why don't we segue into like, how do I, as an owner, if I'm getting the cash in, how do I better manage that to help me with the consistency so that I can replant those seeds and continue to build those relationships and get those clients? Why don't we get into that piece? Because honestly, you can have a lot of money, but if you're not actually managing it in a good way, it's not even a responsible way, but if you're not in a strategic way, you're never, ever, ever going to get out of that cycle.
It's so true. And so many people get stuck there. And then they're like, I'm burned out. I want to quit. Like, this is too hard. I have to
Totally.
Right? Like, and I get it. It's hard. Nobody said this was easy. Like,
no one.
You're really good at what you do and you love it and you see this dream of like having a lifestyle business doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I think people learn that pretty quickly. So I'm probably preaching to the choir, and I don't mean to like dig into that, but it's really important, I think, then for us as business owners to learn the skill of, I don't want to use the word, it's a word that triggers a lot of people, but so we'll get into other words that we can use in like ways that we can talk about it, but you've got to know what your budget is. You've got to know how you're allocating cash before it comes in. So this is the key. Know and have a plan for for what you are doing with the money that comes in before it comes in. We're not looking at our checking account balance and making decisions from that place, friends.
Okay, no, total mic drop, okay? Because seriously, that's all I ever do. Like, I have this much money in. What am I going to do with it? Okay, so now what you're saying is we have to set the budget. Okay, tell us what we have to do instead.
Yeah, so before the money even comes in, you need clarity. You need clarity and you need a plan, right? This is the only way, or else money will slip through your fingers. It won't go to the right places. Feast or famine will feel super hard, right? You'll never get out of it. So what I teach in our bookkeeping services and the way the simple framework that I use is really this idea of like, okay, the revenue that comes in as a business owner, it's not all your revenue, right? You have a portion of that that you need to be responsible for setting aside for taxes. You have a portion of that that maybe you want to, outsource an administrative support or a contractor to help you on some portion of the project that you've got, whatever it is, right? We've got our expenses. So basically, I'd like to have an allocation. So I'll give you a simple allocation that you can use right now and just see if it works, right? We're putting stakes in the ground. There's another big thing. It's just putting those stakes in the ground, right? It's not that if you're off budget or you make a mistake that you have to, berate yourself about it. Really, it's just let me see if this will work. So for service-based businesses, self-employed service providers, you can try using a 30, 20, 50
Okay.
framework, right? So
Keep going.
and that's your budget, right? So that's your budget. Your budget is going to be, okay, I'm going to allocate of the cash coming in to my business, to me for the work that I'm doing. I'm going to allocate 30% to the cost of that delivery, right? So whatever it costs for you to deliver that service, whether that's your time because you're the one who's responsible for delivering the service, or that's you hiring a contractor who's going to deliver a portion of that project, whatever it is, that's the cost of delivery. So that's 30%, okay? 20% is going to be your operating expenses, your overhead. What does it cost to run your business, to keep the lights on, regardless of if you have more or less clients? What are you on the hook for every month, right? That could be a portion for you because you're like, there's no way I could live without having this much come from the business to me to cover my expenses. But usually it's more like, a bookkeeper or insurance, or if you have rent or an office space, right? It's those monthly fixed expenses that you carry throughout the business. That should never be more than 20% of the total revenue that's coming into your business. That leaves you with 50% to play with, my friends. And of that 50% that remains, you're taking a percentage of that and allocating it to tax, right? So 25 to 30% you want to allocate towards tax. And then what remains is for you, for reinvesting in the business, or paying off debt, or the most important thing that I think every self-employed business owner needs to prioritize forever. Are you ready for it? Over all of those things is building your cash savings. We neglect this. Some of us are better at this than others, even on the personal side, but cash is queen, my friends. So yes, we're setting aside money for tax. Yes, we're reinvesting in the business. But before you go taking a windfall and paying off credit card debt, you need cash in the bank, and a sufficient amount of cash at that, right? So if you do have a lot of unpredictable revenue, you're going to want a bigger cash cushion. So if you're somebody who works just on a project basis, for example, you're going to want a hefty cash cushion, maybe 6 months of what it costs for you to run your business and pay yourself, right? You're going to want 6 months. If you have a, retainer offer where you can count on a certain amount of income, maybe you want 3 months because you can fill those spots, or you won't have as much turnover or unpredictability because you have an offer that brings in recurring revenue. So we have to be really smart, right? And run the decisions that we make about what our revenue goals are, about what our budgets are to hire support, about how much we can pay ourselves, about exactly how much cash we need set aside for taxes so that we're not like, freak out at the end of the year, right? Like, this helps you avoid all of that and all of that stress. And it's very simple. And it's just putting these stakes in the ground.
I love this. Okay, I'm going to recap. So what you're saying is we need to have a budget upfront before any revenue comes in. And even if it changes, we need to have stakes in the ground, so to speak, right? You are proposing a 30, 20, 50 allocation. So 30% for delivery. I want to ask you, if you're a service provider, does that include what I get paid?
It can. So if you're the sole human delivering your service, count yourself as a cost, right? Because at some point, you may not want to be the one doing that, but you'll know what your budget is to hire someone else.
I love that so much. That's so important. Okay. So 30% delivery, even if I'm paying myself, I want to replace myself. I need to basically already have that marker in place, that amount. And then when you say the 50%, here's what I heard. So 20%, maybe 30%, hopefully at 20% taxes, cash savings, reinvesting debt. Now does that include, again, paying the owner payment? Can you just be like, does that include where does the payment for the person, for the owner go? Is it also out of the 50%? Okay.
Yes. So whatever remains, right? Whatever remains after you've covered all of your expenses and set aside money for taxes is yours.
Love it. Okay. So this is, I don't know if you can see the comments. So with that said, let's say I set up my 30, 20, 50, right? What do you do with your clients once they kind of set that up? How do you relate that to reality in terms of on the ground revenue?
Yeah. So basically, I look at, part of getting clarity is having perspective. So give yourself perspective, right? Get yourself out of the month to month mindset, the client to client mindset, because you know what that sounds like? It sounds like a paycheck to paycheck mindset. And we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're business owners. We're strategic, we're savvy. There's no ceiling on how much we can earn and how much profit we can make. So let's get our heads in that place. And so what I do is I would pull up your finances from the last 6 months and just start working with averages, right? So if you pull up your profit and loss statement, right, which shows this is the sales or revenue that came in, these are all of the expenses that I paid, and this is what was left over, right? If you're able to look at that and look at the revenue and average out your revenue, right, and average out your net profit, then you're able to look at these percentages and go, okay, from my 6-month average, what is my average revenue? All right, it's about $10,000 a month. Great. I'm going to apply this, 30, 20, 50 rule and see where I should be. How much should I have set aside for taxes? What if I want my revenue goal to be here, or if I want a higher net profit, how much revenue do I need to run through, so that you can start to play with these numbers? And again, there's stakes in the ground, but you should have data. Like if you have been in business for 6 months or more, you have all the information you need to be able to run a very quick audit of how you're allocating your cash and where it's going. And we really need to think about our business as separate from ourselves. But this is one way to do that, even when it feels like they're very enmeshed, when it feels like, well, the money just comes in and then I have to do stuff with it, right? We're still accounting for business expenses properly. We're accounting for tax savings properly. We're accounting for paying you properly, right? And so that's why this framework is just really helpful to get a gut check on how you're managing cash and whether it makes sense.
Well, I think that one of the reasons I really like the sort of framework of the allocation is that when you're starting business, right, you're making, let's say, $20,000, but you're, a year later, whatever, you could be making 100 or 200. And I'm sure the more money you're bringing in, the more complicated it is, or the more, allocation well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think the point is that from the outset, we absolutely have this month to month mindset, right? Which is like, I'm getting something in and I'm spending it, and then I'm getting the next in, and then I'm spending, and whereas opposed to sort of saying, look, based on what I have, let's say I make $10,000 a month, or let's say even $10,000 a month for the first 6 months, right? Like thinking about that in terms of a percentage basis, not like in and out, but like as a whole, right? So if I'm making 100,000, I'm going to still be able to allocate that. I think that, I think that this month to month mindset is something that is a real struggle, because and I think specifically, and this is what I'd love to hear more from you on, is service-based businesses. We both work with service-based businesses, right? It's not like I have a product and I'm going to get this certain amount and I'm going to have it in my warehouse and I'm going to ship it out. And how do we attribute value to services, right? How do we, all of those, it's like much more nebulous. So what is your advice to service providers specifically with regard to this? Because it does feel different than a product where we have a certain amount of inventory, and then we send it out, and we can be very specific about what those costs look like to create it, how much the marketing is. I think it's just a little more defined. Would you agree with that? I guess is maybe the first question.
I think it's just different. Like the way you manage cash flow in a product-based business is very different, right? Because you have this huge outlay of cash to get the product, right? So oftentimes people who run product businesses finance those purchases, right? Because it's like, cool, I'm going to buy all this inventory and I have a plan to market it and sell it, or maybe I took pre-orders. So the risk is very low for me to finance that, order of inventory because I know I'm going to sell it. I think that's what you're sort of getting at, is like there's those numbers are real numbers. They're predictable.
Yeah, there's more structure ahead of time. You're actually budgeting ahead of time, but as a service provider, it's like less necessary in a sense, because it's like my time is so variable. It doesn't really matter, right?
Totally. Well, and that's why I think for service providers, what's really important is something I talk about is like meaningful goals, right? Having meaningful goals. It's not just, I need to make enough money to cover my bills this month. It's really taking a beat and stepping back and thinking to yourself, what do I need in my life? Like we have the privilege to be like, how much do I want to make, right? Like that's a fun exercise. How much do I want to make so that I can cover my bills, can, be saving and investing, paying off any debt that I have, and have it and building my cash cushion, right? So really, I think it's up to us. And this is why it's so difficult, because it's all up to us. If you are a service provider, and especially freelancers and solopreneurs, it's all on you, my loves. And I get how freaking difficult that is. But the fact of the matter is that it is. And there's, two sides to that coin. There's the pressure of what that means and what that looks like and all of that, right? But there's also this other really beautiful side where it's like, you get to decide how much you want to make and go for it, right? So if your revenue goal for the year, a lot of people, sometimes the framing they use is, well, I want to replace my salary. I want to replace my corporate salary. And people are like, is that okay? And I'm like, yes, that's fine. It's totally up to you. Could be like, I want to double my corporate salary. What would that look like? How much would I need to sell? If I doubled that, like what actions would I need to take? How would I need to get more visible? Does that mean that I'm posting on LinkedIn every day and sending DMs to my, my ideal clients? And it gets you to this place where you can have a more pointed strategy when you have more specific, meaningful goals. And when they're bigger, I feel like there's this call to really move to another place in yourself to make it happen. And so it's easier almost from that place, right? To use this metric, because you can sit down and we're looking at, okay, the last 6 months, but what if we sit down for 2025 and we say, okay, in the next 6 months, right? The first 2 quarters of 2025, it would be so incredible if I can hit my goal that I hit this year, if I could hit that in 6 months and cut the time in half. Who would I need to be? Where would I need to show up? What would I need to do to make that happen? And if I hit that mark, I already have a plan for where that money's going to go, right? So it takes a little bit of the anxiety out of the selling that we need to do, because some people hold themselves back from selling because they're like, I don't want to pay more taxes. It's just going to go to taxes. Oh. And so we hold ourselves back from making bolder moves because we're like, I don't know, if I make too much money, people don't know how to manage a lot of money either. That's a whole other problem. I mean, there's lots of people who can help you with that. Anyway, there are all these like subconscious blockers that we have, right? So making it neutral and using a framework like this and just like sort of taking the emotional, part out of it, which I know is not easy, can just be a helpful exercise.
What is so interesting is that when people have been in business and they have been getting referrals only, okay, they could literally be a 1-year-old business who has gotten all of their business through referrals, but they literally could be a 10-year-old business, an 8-year-old business who have built their entire business on referrals, which is not inherently a bad thing. But you're not in control if the market shifts or your referrals dry out or whatever, right? And when I begin to work with people to help them build an actual marketing and sales plan to go to market and bring leads in and convert those people, a certain number of those people into clients, the number one thing that they lack is knowing what they want. Because all this time, they were just kind of taking the clients that came, right? And so it's really interesting to me because on your end, you're saying the same thing. You're like, you have to decide, you get to decide what you want your revenue to look like. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like that is such an important mindset leap. It's like, who do you want to work with? Like, do you want to work with those people or those people? And it's as similar to you in terms of looking at the historical record of who you've worked with. And like you want to go to market, you need to know what industry, how big are they, what is their problem? Like you have to decide all of that stuff. And your side, you're saying the same thing, which is like you have to know what you want. Like it's fascinating. I don't know. It's just that's basically the essence of going into business, right? You have to know what you want because getting there is okay, but like the hard part is figuring out what do you actually want and being okay with deciding that, right? And deciding that and knowing that there's already so many unknowns. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a special person to go on this ride and stay on this ride for a very long time. Either it's exhilarating or it's absolutely terrifying, right? Like either you like roller coasters or you don't kind of thing, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. This has been amazing. All right. If anybody's here and has a question, please put it in the chat. While we do that, or in the comments section or whatever it's called, tell us about how people can work with you. Cause, I think there's a couple ways and we'd love to hear. I'm going to actually put these links in the comment section for everybody now, but tell us more.
Yes. So I just launched a bookkeeping offer. It's more than basic bookkeeping. So we're really trying to leverage, all of the really meticulous, detailed work that our bookkeepers do to help give you insights, to give you some direction, so that you don't feel alone in the financial decisions that you have to make. So if you are an agency owner or service provider who is generating less than $350,000 a year, that is an offer that you can check out. I know Selena will drop the link. And then we also offer for larger agencies and service providers full accounting support, tax and advising services. So if you want a full-fledged finance team, women-led, by licensed experts, we are definitely open to that. And especially if you're in a stage of growth and scaling. And we get a lot of clients who come to us and they're like, I don't know, it's just crazy. There's so much. And I'm like, don't worry, give it to me. We will handle it. So that's our happy place. So yeah, those are some ways to work with me. And then I have a newsletter that I'm really active on. It's called Savvy Scaling Beyond 500K, Everything Your Accountant Never Told You. So sign up, get on there, get to know me, get to know our business. And I'm also very accessible. So DMs on LinkedIn, I love. Coffee chats, I love. So the more the merrier. Yeah, please reach out.
Yes. I mean, when we talk about cash flow, if you need support getting more cash in, more steady cash in on a consistent basis, you can DM me. You can find me on LinkedIn. We're already here on LinkedIn. And I think once you have that money, how do you actually manage that in a great way? And I know you just launched this amazing new bookkeeping less than 350K offer, which is going to be just like so important for people who are, just like, it's funny because I think we were talking before we started, and I think just that education piece around it and learning how do we think about money. And I think for women in particular, we just don't have a lot of generational sort of, history around managing that. And I think I just want to add one really quick thing. I do find a lot of, especially like in the last 5 years, women left corporate because they were like, I got to get out of here, but didn't fully have a structure around getting clients or a structure around managing that. And that's when you aren't able to build the fund your business dream, which is kind of this is the title of this session. Like the whole goal isn't to go into business to like hate your life, right? It's to have all those things. But in order to have that, you have to have money in and you have to be able to manage that money well to get you to a place where you can actually enjoy your business. It's always hard, to be honest, right? I think we're clear on that.
Never ends. It never ends.
It never ends. So, well, Luisa, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Actually, I don't think we've ever really had a convo like this. So I'm happy to have done it live and in real time and in space on LinkedIn. So that was super fun.
Yeah, and it's fun that it'll live on and continue to contribute value. And if people comment and stuff, I don't know how this works with LinkedIn Lives, but like I would love to have conversations if people do have questions or things come up, like really have some engagement there. Thank you so much for having me. It's always such a joy to talk with you.
Oh, it was so fun. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And yes, for if anyone's listening, send your questions in the comments, send your questions directly to Luisa, send them to me, whoever you want to have questions. Like, that's what we're here for. That's why we do what we do. So, all right. Thank you, Luisa. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks,
Catch you
everyone.
next time. Bye.